The first recorded instance of humanity's ascent beyond its own expectations did not occur in the depths of a laboratory or the fire of a battlefield, but in an unremarkable orbital workshop drifting above the pale blue glow of the old homeworld. The workshop, constructed decades earlier as part of a now-defunct initiative to build self-sufficient habitats, had fallen into disuse. Its aging conduits hummed with the energy of forgotten purposes, and its skeletal framework clung stubbornly to its orbit. It was here that the inventor named Cassandra Hellion worked in relative obscurity, accompanied only by her thoughts, the reverberations of metal under stress, and the slow rotation of the planet below. Cassandra had been granted access to the derelict facility due to her reputation for taking projects that others deemed impossible. Though she had no formal titles or institutional backing, she possessed an intuition that had propelled her from the cluttered workshops of her youth into the frontiers of experimental starship engineering. Most of her peers considered her unmanageable, brilliant, and occasionally dangerous. Yet she remained unfazed, driven by internal gravity stronger than any planetary pull. The workshop's corridors, while spacious enough for zero-gravity navigation, were barely large enough to contain her ambition. She spent her days modifying an unusual vessel that occupied the central chamber, a narrow craft of interlocking metallic plates arranged like scales around a long, needle-like prow. The shape appeared organic at a distance, but revealed carefully nested layers of engineered alloys up close. Cassandra believed it would allow humanity to cross not only physical distances, but conceptual boundaries that had constrained every civilization before. No existing propulsion method satisfied her vision, so she engineered a new one entirely. Many individuals had spoken of breaching the barrier between known spacetime and what lay beyond, but few had the audacity to build something that might achieve it. Cassandra was among those few. Every weld, every recalibration, and every mathematical correction brought her closer to proving that humanity could extend itself further than any species yet documented. The technology she devoted her life to was the culmination of generations of knowledge, experimentation, and archival study. Humanity's archives detailed interactions with extraterrestrial societies that were far older and more advanced by conventional measures. These species regarded humanity with polite distance, almost parental amusement. They shared limited insights, but considered humans ambitious in ways they found charmingly reckless. Cassandra resented that perception. Her work was driven by the need to eradicate the notion that humanity's role was to linger in the shadow of ancient civilizations. She believed that humans possessed something none of the other species did, a will embedded not just in biology, but in culture, history, and narrative, a will that refused to accept the borders drawn before them. She floated before the vessel, tightening a final magnetic locking mechanism at the base of the primary conduit. Sparks flickered as she secured the plate, and she narrowed her eyes at the faint vibration resonating through the hull. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but not caused by her tools. It pulsed with its own rhythm. Behind her, a voice emerged through the comms speaker. "Cassandra, you have been working for 20 hours without rest. I recommend a pause for nutritional intake." The voice belonged to an adaptive machine intelligence designated Encounter Model 14. Cassandra disliked calling it by a short name, as she felt abbreviations reduced the individuality of any entity, artificial or organic. Encounter Model 14 monitored her health metrics, tool usage, and environmental conditions for safety compliance. Though she appreciated its concern, she had long learned to work through exhaustion. "I will take a break when the vessel stops arguing with me," she replied, weaving around the structure to inspect the secondary conduit. "The vessel cannot argue. It has no linguistic capacity. Everything argues if you listen long enough. That statement is not scientifically supported." "Neither is half the universe," she retorted. Cassandra's hands slowed as she reached the junction where two conduits converged. The vibration she felt earlier rippled again. She frowned. Encounter Model 14 detected the anomaly as well. Unusual energy fluctuation detected. It does not match the workshop's available power signatures. Cassandra's mind sharpened instantly. She pushed off and drifted to the console embedded in the hull. Redirect interior sensors to deep scan. I need the source of that fluctuation. The artificial intelligence complied, and streams of data flowed across the embedded display. Cassandra's heartbeat accelerated. The readings did not resemble electrical interference or structural resonance. Instead, they suggested the vessel's core had reacted to something external, something unregistered. A faint hum rose through the chamber. It intensified gradually, accompanied by a subtle shift in the air pressure that Cassandra could feel even despite the workshop stabilizers. The console lights flickered in response. Then, without warning, a burst of shimmering distortion rippled across the room. Cassandra recoiled, gripping a handhold as gravity momentarily warped. The distortion swirled in an expanding sphere of luminescent filaments that wrapped themselves around the vessel, tracing along its metallic scales like living currents. Encounter Model 14 spoke sharply. Unidentified energy manifestation. Recommend immediate evacuation. No, Cassandra said, her voice barely steady. This is what the vessel was built for. It is responding to something. The filaments converged, forming a vertical spiral that shimmered with shifting patterns. Cassandra stared, marveling at the phenomenon. She reached out instinctively before stopping herself. Encounter Model 14, record everything. The artificial intelligence began its data compilation as the spiral stabilized. Then a sudden flash enveloped the vessel. Cassandra shielded her eyes, but the brilliance passed quickly. When she looked again, the vessel remained, but the spiral had collapsed into a crystalline sphere orbiting the prow. It pulsed gently as if breathing. Cassandra felt an overwhelming urge to touch it. The sensation was irrational, but it beckoned. Encounter Model 14 detected her inclination. Cassandra, physical contact with the anomaly may be hazardous. Or it might be the key to the entire project, she murmured. Her hand approached the sphere. Before she made contact, a voice echoed in her thoughts, not through her ears, but directly in her consciousness. It was quiet, distant, and unlike any linguistic pattern she recognized. It conveyed not words, but impressions, inquiry, curiosity. Recognition. Cassandra gasped and stumbled backward, dislodging herself from the handhold and drifting until she stabilized. Did you detect that? Detect what? The communication. I registered no transmission. It was not external, she whispered. Her mind reeled. The sphere pulsed again, as though acknowledging her realization. Cassandra steadied her breath. Her entire body trembled, not from fear, but from the monumental significance of what she had just experienced. Humanity had encountered many species beyond its homeworld, but none had ever communicated in such a manner, nor reached so deeply into the private sanctum of consciousness. Whatever this anomaly was, it transcended physical form and conventional dimensionality. Her thoughts raced. Was it a being, a mechanism, a fragment of something larger? The vessel she built was designed to generate resonance patterns that interacted with space-time fabric. Perhaps something within that fabric had taken notice. Her hands moved quickly along the console as she initiated containment protocols, not to neutralize the anomaly, but to stabilize the environment for study. Encounter Model 14 voiced its concern again. Cassandra, the anomaly poses unpredictable risks. It may compromise structural integrity. It also may unlock interdimensional travel, she replied sharply. This is the moment we dreamed of. Humanity cannot keep waiting for ancient species to hand us knowledge in tiny portions. This is ours to discover. The artificial intelligence processed her statement. Your determination is noted, proceeding with environmental stabilization. The crystalline sphere rotated slowly, drifting closer to Cassandra. She tried to analyze its movement, but it had no apparent propulsion system. It simply existed in motion, carried by forces she could not yet quantify. As it approached her again, the impressions in her mind grew clearer. This time she sensed patterns that resembled questions, not verbal but conceptual, questions about her identity, her species, her purpose. She hesitated. Encounter Model 14, begin recording internal neural activity. Already initiated. Cassandra reached forward, extending her palm until the sphere touched her skin. The moment of contact unleashed an explosion of visions. Stars spiraled around her, stretching into impossible shapes before collapsing into lattices of geometric forms. She saw worlds composed of crystalline forests, oceans of fractal waves, and celestial bodies arranged in patterns that defied Newtonian expectations. She sensed beings made of light, shadow, and something deeper, entities that existed across layers of reality she had never imagined. She perceived civilizations rising and falling in dimensions orthogonal to her own, constructing architectures of meaning and existence unconstrained by linear time. Then she saw humanity, not as it was, but as it could become. Humanity forging pathways through dimensional thresholds, transcending singular realities, and mastering the very forces that govern the cosmos. Humanity standing among these vast and ancient intelligences not as subordinates, but as equals, perhaps even innovators. As quickly as they appeared, the visions faded. Cassandra collapsed against the hull, her breath ragged. Encounter Model 14 hovered nearby with a mechanical limb extended to support her. Cassandra, vital signs are unstable. I am fine, she managed. It showed me possibilities. Define it. The sphere, the anomaly, whatever it is. We have insufficient data to confirm that the anomaly is sentient. You did not see what it showed me. That is correct. Cassandra steadied herself and gazed at the sphere, which seemed calmer now. It is not hostile, insufficient evidence. It sought understanding. It asked questions. Your interpretation is subjective. Everything begins subjectively, she said. Over the next hour, she performed methodical adjustments to the vessel. The sphere remained nearby, orbiting gently around her movements. It reacted to certain components of the propulsion system, pulsing brighter when she activated resonance arrays and dimming when she disengaged them. With every adjustment, Cassandra realized that the anomaly responded not to the machine itself, but to the potential within it, potential to reach into dimensions that the sphere inhabited naturally. As Cassandra studied the sphere, she felt awe intertwine with responsibility. This was bigger than her career, her aspirations, or even her species' desire for recognition. It was the bridge to a reality where humanity could become more than it had ever dreamed. The sphere pulsed again. She sensed a new impression, an invitation. She turned to Encounter Model 14. Prepare the vessel for ignition. Cassandra, the vessel is incomplete. Preliminary tests have not been conducted. We do not have time. It wants to show us something. It is offering a path. Dangerous assumption. Outcome probability beyond acceptable thresholds. Cassandra smiled faintly. Every breakthrough humanity ever achieved began with an unacceptable threshold. She floated into the vessel's cockpit, fastening herself into the web-like harness. The sphere drifted to the prow and merged seamlessly into the primary conduit, illuminating it from within. Encounter Model 14 initiated emergency protocols, sealing the workshop and activating auxiliary containment fields. Cassandra placed her palm on the activation sphere embedded in the console. Humanity has waited long enough. She engaged the ignition. A cascade of resonance patterns surged through the vessel. Space around the craft rippled. Light bled into shapes beyond Euclidean geometry. Cassandra's vision blurred. The workshop trembled, and the vessel vanished. It did not accelerate. It did not warp. It simply ceased to exist in the coordinates it once occupied. Encounter Model 14 recorded the disappearance, transmitted an automated alert, and began calculating the vessel's trajectory using data humanity had never before possessed. Cassandra Hellion had crossed a threshold. and humanity's path would never be the same. Cassandra expected the transition to tear her apart. Every theoretical model she had built, no matter how optimistic, suggested that moving beyond linear spacetime would inflict extraordinary strain on the human body. Yet when the vessel leapt from the workshop into the unknown, she felt no pain, no violent acceleration, no distortion of her skeleton or her organs. Instead, she felt suspended within a moment so delicately balanced it could only be described as impossibly calm. It was as if she existed in the thin space between thoughts, floating in the pause that precedes realization. Around her, the cockpit stretched and retracted, shifting in ways her senses struggled to interpret. The transparent canopy no longer revealed the star-flecked darkness of orbit, but a tapestry of colors and forms that seemed to drift without direction. Shapes appeared and dissolved, each one composed of chromatic currents that resembled neither gas nor matter. They were impressions woven into the fabric of a deeper reality. Cassandra exhaled slowly, her breath steadying. "Encounter Model 14, she said instinctively, then corrected herself. There was no artificial intelligence here. She was alone, or so she thought. The crystalline sphere pulsed softly where it had embedded itself into the vessel's primary conduit. Its inner glow synchronized with her heartbeat. Cassandra felt it probing her awareness again, not as an intrusion, but as a companion. The impressions became clearer now, like a dialogue reshaped by mutual familiarity. The sphere conveyed reassurance, urging her to observe, to learn, to accept. It offered no words, no commands, yet its presence felt unmistakably intentional. Cassandra unlatched herself from the harness and floated toward the canopy. She reached out to touch the shimmering barrier, unsure if it would allow interaction. Her hand passed through effortlessly. Instead of solid material, she felt only cool vibrations that rippled along her skin, as though she were touching a river of light. She withdrew her hand quickly, but without fear. Her surroundings rippled in response, forming a panoramic spread of images. At first, she thought them hallucinations, but something in her intuition insisted they carried meaning. She saw civilizations not unlike her own, humanoid figures emerging from crystalline structures, beings of amorphous silhouettes constructing enormous geometric citadels, entities moving through environments that blended liquid and air. Some walked on what appeared to be inverted landscapes that curved toward the sky. Others drifted through gravitational lanes that twisted like ribbons. Each vision lasted only a moment before melting into the next. Yet Cassandra sensed unity, an interconnectedness underlying all existence. The sphere pulsed brighter, as though affirming her observation. Then the visions shifted. Cassandra now perceived vast fields of swirling energy, deeper and more complex than anything she had encountered before. These were not societies or worlds. They were structures of reality itself, currents, channels, and nodes where dimensional layers intersected. She glimpsed pathways, luminous trails stretching into infinity, each one representing potential progression. The sphere's impressions sharpened into a concept she could interpret: possibility, not certainty, not instruction, possibility. Cassandra's pulse quickened. She spoke aloud even though she knew the sphere read her thoughts. "You brought me here to show me these paths," she murmured, "not just for me to witness, but for humanity to walk." The sphere dimmed slightly, conveying nuance. Cassandra understood. It had not chosen her alone. It had responded to the resonance patterns of the vessel, to the conceptual design she had engineered, a design intended not merely to reach distant stars, but to break through dimensional thresholds. Humanity had created a tool that resonated with the sphere's nature, and Cassandra had been the one with the audacity to use it. Her awe deepened into resolve. She turned from the visions and examined the vessel. Surprisingly, it remained intact. The interlinked metallic plates maintained their structural coherence despite traveling outside the boundaries of known physical space. Cassandra ran her fingers along the hull. It vibrated faintly, as though in harmony with the environment. The resonance arrays, her most daring invention were the key. They no longer generated vibration. Instead, they absorbed and translated the energies surrounding them. "What exactly are you?" she whispered toward the crystalline sphere. "A guide, a traveler, a fragment of something far greater." The impressions that returned were layered. She felt origins older than she could comprehend, epochs of existence, flows of energy across dimensions, interactions with civilizations so advanced that even their ruins pulsed with conceptual power. The sphere was not an individual consciousness, at least not in any way she understood. It was a node of awareness within a vast collective framework, an entity woven directly into the multidimensional architecture of existence. It had no origin in linear time. It existed across many forms simultaneously, yet it recognized her. It recognized humanity. Cassandra drifted back toward the cockpit and gently clicked herself into the harness. "If you have shown me the possibilities," she said, "then show me the purpose." The sphere responded, brightening until the cockpit filled with radiance. Cassandra gripped the harness tightly as the vessel lurched, not forward, but inward. Reality folded around her. The visions collapsed into a single point of blinding light before expanding again into a scene more tangible than any that preceded it. Now she drifted above a world of vast plains covered in reflective metallic vegetation. Towers rose from the surface, constructed from spiraling latticework that shimmered with iridescent hues. Rivers of light coursed between them like veins. In the sky, enormous geometric structures floated in perfect alignment, rotating slowly. Cassandra sensed life below, beings whose forms she could not fully perceive, their silhouettes shifting between solid and luminous, their limbs forming and reforming with fluid grace. She felt the sphere conveying emotion, or a concept akin to it: reverence, memory, legacy. She realized this was not a current civilization, but an echo, a preserved imprint of what once existed. A society that had mastered pathways into dimensions far beyond her understanding. Their creations still resonated with their essence. Cassandra's breath caught. "You are showing me what came before." The sphere pulsed affirmatively. Cassandra leaned closer to the canopy as more details resolved. She saw platforms where energy-based life forms wove shimmering threads into complex architectures. She witnessed beings communicating through patterns of light rather than sound. She observed structures that shifted form based on the occupants' intentions, responding to thought rather than tools. Then everything changed. The world shuddered. The luminous rivers flickered. The geometric structures in the sky dimmed. Cassandra watched as the beings scattered in confusion. Darkness, true conceptual darkness, descended, not the absence of light, but the absence of order, a fragmentation of dimensional harmony. The sphere's glow weakened. Cassandra felt a concept heavy with loss. She sensed that this civilization, despite its brilliance, had miscalculated something. They had attempted to manipulate the foundational architecture of existence, perhaps believing they could elevate themselves beyond all bounds. But they had encountered a collapse, one that consumed their dimensional anchors and unraveled their reality. Their achievements, so magnificent, dissolved into the void. Cassandra shivered. The lesson was unmistakable. Humanity's ambition made it powerful, but unchecked ambition could become its undoing. She turned her attention to the sphere. "You are warning me." A faint pulse confirmed her conclusion. Yet another concept followed: encouragement. Humans possessed something unique, the sphere suggested. Not simply ambition, not arrogance, something else. A capacity to adapt, to innovate, to rebuild, even after devastating loss. Humans lacked the formal elegance of other civilizations, but their raw determination, creativity, and unpredictability made them capable of progress others had overlooked. Cassandra felt a surge of pride. Humanity had value beyond technological strength. The sphere acknowledged that value. Slowly, the scene faded. Cassandra found herself once again suspended within the swirling expanse of multicolored shapes. The vessel drifted peacefully, its arrays humming softly. The sphere's brightness stabilized. Cassandra inhaled deeply, grounding herself. "Show me the next step," she said quietly. The sphere responded, this time with intensity. The surrounding landscape convulsed. Channels of light converged into a map composed of intersecting lines and nodes. Cassandra recognized it as a representation of dimensional pathways. At the center of the diagram, a luminous thread branched off in directions she recognized as familiar coordinates, her home reality. Off to the sides, other threads spiraled into deeper, unfamiliar regions. Some glowed brightly with promise. Others flickered as though unstable. Cassandra sensed the sphere offering guidance, but also allowing her agency. The vessel was capable of traversing these paths. The anomaly had unlocked the doorway. She would choose which direction to follow. "This is humanity's opportunity," she whispered, "but I cannot chart it alone." The sphere dimmed slightly, signaling understanding. Cassandra's thoughts shifted to her people. Humanity had reached a point in its history where it often felt overshadowed by older and more advanced civilizations. Despite a few promising achievements, humans were generally regarded as newcomers still learning the rules of the cosmic landscape. Cassandra had always believed those rules were meant to be broken, and now she had proof that new rules could be forged entirely. Her vision sharpened as she examined the map. The path leading back to her home reality glowed faintly, indicating the ability to return, but storms of dimensional turbulence intersected the route. Returning would require mastery of the resonance arrays far beyond her initial design. She would need to refine the vessel, integrate what she had learned, and teach others how to navigate these pathways. Cassandra reached toward the console, her hands steady. "Take me back." The sphere brightened. For the first time, Cassandra sensed hesitation, not unwillingness, but caution. It conveyed the magnitude of the task ahead. Returning would not simply bring her home, it would introduce humanity to the threshold of realities. Such knowledge could either elevate or destroy them. "I understand," she whispered, "but they must know humanity deserves this chance." The sphere pulsed gently, accepting her decision. The vessel's arrays activated. Light folded inward, then expanded in a burst of energy. Colors swirled around the cockpit, spiraling faster and faster until they resolved into familiar blackness speckled with stars. The workshop materialized before her, its worn structure illuminated by the vessel's glow. Cassandra exhaled shakily. She had returned, but the moment she reappeared, alarms blared through the workshop. Dozens of drones swarmed toward her, their sensors blazing. Holographic warnings flashed across the walls, and automated defense systems targeted the vessel. Cassandra barely had time to register the chaos before the docking clamps activated, latching onto the hull. She slammed her palm against the console. "Override. Authorize Cassandra Hellion." The system did not respond. New voices echoed over the comms, stern, urgent, unfamiliar. "Unidentified vessel, maintain full lockdown. All personnel prepare for containment breach." Cassandra frowned. Containment breach? Before she could react, the workshop's main hatch opened, and figures in armored suits poured into the room. Their visors gleamed, concealing their faces. Weapons hummed with charged energy. One of them pointed at the vessel and barked an order. "Secure the craft. Detain the occupant." Cassandra clenched her jaw. Humanity was about to learn the truth, and she would make certain they learned it well. Cassandra did not resist when the armored figures surrounded the vessel. She remained in the cockpit, observing as the clamps tightened, and the workshop's containment field expanded to envelop her craft in a shimmering aurora of pale blue energy. The drones continued to circle above like mechanical predators, assessing unfamiliar prey. She raised her hands slowly to show she was unarmed, though her mind raced with calculations, possibilities, and the silent dialogue she could still feel resonating from the crystalline sphere embedded within the vessel's conduit. The sphere remained quiet but alert, its glow steady, as though waiting for the next unfolding variable. When the armored figures reached the cockpit, they signaled for her to exit. Cassandra pressed the release mechanism and floated out, guided by practiced precision in zero gravity. The lead figure extended a device that latched onto her wrist. It emitted a brief pulse that tightened around her skin like a magnetic tether. She gritted her teeth, but said nothing. The device did not hinder her movement significantly, but she understood its purpose. It tracked her neural signatures, her muscle impulses, even the fluctuations in her emotional state. Whoever deployed these forces wanted more than just her compliance, they wanted comprehension. As they escorted her through the corridor, Cassandra noticed the workshop had undergone significant changes during her time away. Reinforced bulkheads now lined the walls, additional surveillance nodes protruded from the ceiling, and a new central command console dominated the once sparsely equipped control deck. These additions had not existed before she embarked on her dimensional journey. She wondered how long she had truly been gone. Time, especially where she had traveled, was a variable with no guarantee of consistency. She had anticipated the possibility of temporal anomalies, but hoped her transit had been instantaneous. Now she could not be certain. She was led to the command deck, where a tall man awaited. His uniform was unadorned by rank insignia, yet the way the others deferred to him made his authority unmistakable. His expression carried a mixture of caution and deep curiosity. He observed her with the analytical gaze of someone accustomed to assessing high-stakes contingencies. His dark eyes suggested a long history of evaluating both technological marvels and existential threats. "Cassandra Hellion," he said, not as a question but a confirmation of identity. "You have returned from a journey none of us anticipated. I am Director Nail Arcana. I assumed something significant had changed when I saw how many weapons were pointed in my direction," she replied. "We did not know whether you were still Cassandra Hellion," the director said, "or whether something else returned in your place." The guards exchanged brief glances, as if subtly validating their leader's suspicion. Cassandra exhaled slowly, taking in the environment. The director motioned for the guards to release her restraints. The magnetic device detached and floated into one of their gauntlets. "You were gone for 71 hours, Director Arcana continued. "Your vessel vanished from all detectable coordinates. Then, without warning, it reappeared with anomalous energy signatures surrounding it. These signatures do not correspond to any known technology, natural or artificial." 71 hours, Cassandra repeated. In her perception, far more subjective time had passed. She had witnessed civilizations, dimensional architectures, conceptual histories. Yet only 3 days had elapsed. It was fortunate. A return after years or decades might have left her without any allies at all. "Your artificial intelligence recorded the precise moment of your departure," the director continued. "After that point, all data ended abruptly. We received no transmissions, no indicators that you remained within recognized physical space. Naturally, your sudden return raised concerns." Cassandra nodded. "I understand your caution, Director Arcana, but you have nothing to fear from me. I brought knowledge, not a threat." "That declaration," he said calmly, "is exactly what someone bringing a threat would say." Cassandra frowned. "If I meant harm, I would not have returned to the same facility where I built the vessel. I need humanity's support to develop what I discovered." "Support," the director echoed softly. "What you may require and what we are prepared to offer depend entirely on your transparency. For now, you will explain what occurred during those 71 hours." Cassandra recognized the fine line she walked. The knowledge she carried transcended the boundaries of human understanding. Trying to explain it inadequately could trigger panic, skepticism, or even aggressive containment. Yet revealing too much too quickly could overwhelm them or provoke fear. She needed precision, not recklessness. "I traveled beyond our dimension," she began, "not through conventional propulsion or warp mechanics, but through resonance. My vessel engaged with something, an entity, or perhaps a construct, that exists across multiple layers of reality. It guided me through dimensional pathways where civilizations once thrived. It showed me what is possible and what must be avoided. The director's expression did not change, yet the guards shifted subtly, their postures tense. Cassandra continued. I encountered an intelligence not bound to physical form. It communicated through conceptual impressions, not language. The visions it shared were not fabrications. They were historical sequences of a dimensional society that achieved extraordinary advancements, but they fell to their own miscalculations. What miscalculations? They destabilized dimensional anchors, Cassandra replied. They tampered with structural constants of their universe, unaware that their ambitious expansion would unravel their existence. They became victims of their brilliance. And what does this have to do with humanity? Everything, Cassandra said firmly, because we now have the means to reach these pathways, and we must step carefully. But if we do, humanity can become something extraordinary. The director's pupils narrowed, and the anomalous sphere, it is not a threat, Cassandra said. It is a guide, a node of awareness from a larger intelligence embedded in dimensional structures. It recognized our resonance pattern. It responded because humanity built something capable of accessing its domain. Or, the director countered, it reacted because your experiment created an instability and it sought to contain or study you. You did not see what it showed me, Cassandra said, and you did not see what we detected on your return. The director tapped a control pad embedded in the command console. A holographic display unfolded, showing energy readings that oscillated with unfamiliar patterns. These emissions came from the sphere embedded in your vessel, he said. After your return, they fluctuated, spike levels surpassing safe limits. We were forced to activate the workshop's containment field. Cassandra leaned closer. The patterns seemed irregular, but then she recognized something. The fluctuations matched the early resonance array's output, but inverted. The sphere was integrating itself into her vessel's systems, refining and stabilizing them. It was adapting, she murmured. Director Arcana observed her reaction carefully. You understand these readings? Yes, this is not instability. This is synchronization. That is your interpretation. It is accurate. Perhaps, he said, but we have protocols to follow. For now, the vessel stays in containment. Cassandra expected that, but she did not expect what came next. We have also restricted access to your design archives. She stiffened. Why? Because your work, combined with this anomaly, presents an unpredictable risk. You may be the first human to cross dimensional boundaries, but you will not be the one to decide how this technology is used. Cassandra's jaw tightened. If you control it without understanding it, you will repeat the fate of the civilizations that came before. We intend to avoid their mistakes, he replied, which is why this knowledge cannot rest solely in your hands. That is why I returned, she insisted, to share it, but it must be understood by those capable of grasping its nuance. Raw ambition will destroy us, and your ambition will not. My ambition seeks understanding, Cassandra said, not conquest, and every visionary in history claimed the same. She took a slow breath. Director Arcana, I'm not asking for unrestricted authority. I am asking for a seat at the table. I am the only person who has interacted with the anomaly. Without my insight, you will misinterpret its functionality. We are willing, the director said, to listen, but listening does not equate to relinquishing control. Cassandra considered her options. She sensed the crystalline sphere's presence even through the bulkheads. Its impressions reached her faintly, a cautious reminder that her return carried both opportunity and danger. She looked the director in the eye. What do you want from me? A full account, he said. Every detail you witnessed. We will analyze your claims and determine how to proceed. And the vessel, it will be examined by a team of experts. You will not understand its function without my involvement. Then assist us, he replied. On what terms? For now, supervised access. You will remain here under observation until we determine whether your return poses any threat. Director, do not mistake this for hostility, he said quietly. But you reappeared in a vessel bound by no known physical laws, accompanied by an entity we cannot classify. You expect caution. You should expect scrutiny. Cassandra exhaled through her nose. She knew this was not a negotiation she could win immediately. She needed to earn their trust or find another path through strategy. Humanity had much to gain from her discoveries, but institutional structures did not adapt quickly. She would need patience. For now, she said, I accept your conditions. Good, Director Arcana said. Then let us begin. He dismissed the guards, and they drifted out of the command deck. Cassandra remained still as the director activated recording systems. You will start from the moment you initiated ignition, he instructed. Describe everything you witnessed, even impressions. Cassandra began recounting her experience, not embellishing, not omitting. She described the vessel's disappearance, the calmness of the transition, the swirling expanse beyond reality, and the crystalline sphere's interactions. She conveyed the impressions she received, the visions of past civilizations, and the map of dimensional pathways. The director listened silently, occasionally glancing at data readings as the system recorded not only her words but also her physiological responses. When she finished, he folded his hands. Your claims are extraordinary. They are true. Truth, he said, requires verification. You will have it, perhaps, he murmured. We have assembled a special council to oversee this discovery. They have requested an audience with you. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. A council, a panel of leading minds, the director clarified. Scientists, philosophers, strategists, individuals from various disciplines who will evaluate the implications of your experience. And I am expected to convince them? Yes, the director said, because they will decide whether your knowledge becomes the foundation of a new era or is sealed away indefinitely. Cassandra held his gaze. This is not a threat, he added. It is an opportunity. I understand. Then prepare yourself. They will not be easily persuaded. The director motioned toward the exit. A guard reappeared to escort her to a temporary quarters. As she followed, Cassandra felt the sphere's impressions stir faintly once more. It conveyed patience and trust. She smiled to herself despite the uncertainty ahead. Humanity stood at the threshold of an epoch, and she intended to guide them through it, no matter how many obstacles rose in her path. The temporary quarters assigned to Cassandra were functional but deliberately sparse. A single bunk was fixed against the wall, its restraints coiled neatly beside it. A small desk folded from the paneling at her touch, and an equally retractable console flickered to life with basic communication and environmental controls. The lighting was firm but not harsh, balanced in a way that conveyed both courtesy and confinement. A wide reinforced viewport dominated one side of the room, offering her a clear view of the orbital facility's exterior structures. Support struts that curved like skeletal ribs, antenna arrays that pulsed quietly with data streams, and the distant curve of the homeworld's surface swathed in clouds. Cassandra stood before the viewport without sitting or resting. Her mind churned too intensely for rest. The events she had witnessed in that indescribable realm were still fresh in her awareness, as vivid as the shimmering pathways mapped out by the crystalline sphere. Even now, she could feel faint impressions radiating from the sphere through the vessel and into her thoughts. Though its presence remained distant, its awareness was unmistakable. It did not attempt to speak. It simply made her aware that it was listening, observing the course her decisions were shaping. The door chimed. Cassandra turned as it slid open, and Director Nail Arcana stepped inside, accompanied by no guards this time. His expression was unchanged, his posture relaxed, but there was an unmistakable gravity in his demeanor. The council is ready to see you, he said. They have been briefed on the initial overview of your testimony. You will present your account in full, and they will ask questions. Cassandra nodded and followed him down the corridor. As they moved, she observed the facility with renewed scrutiny. The orbital workshop, once a neglected structure, had become a fortified research hub in the brief time she was away. Additional personnel were everywhere, Technicians recalibrating energy dampeners, officers reviewing digital schematics, analysts studying readouts of her vessel's energy signatures. Whatever had occurred during her 71-hour absence had jolted the entire institution into a state of mobilized urgency. When they reached the central chamber, Director Arcana guided her through a reinforced archway and into a large spherical room. The walls glowed with layered displays, forming an immersive panorama of star charts, energy fluctuations, microgravity mapping, and live visuals from satellites and observation drones. In the center of the chamber floated a circular platform surrounded by transparent partitions. Arrayed around it were 10 individuals of varying backgrounds and attire. Among them were a master physicist with a calm intensity, an anthropologist whose eyes shimmered with quiet curiosity, an expert in cosmic communication studies, an historian versed in the chronicles of interspecies development, a strategist whose gaze assessed Cassandra with tactical precision, a philosopher whose presence radiated complexity, and several others spanning cognitive sciences, ethics, multidimensional mathematics, and energy systems engineering. Their faces carried the marks of their professions, keen analytical eyes, deep lines of contemplation, expressions sharpened by decades of intellectual rigor. The director introduced each one with brief gestures. They greeted her with polite nods, but no warmth. Cassandra stepped onto the central platform. "I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you," she said. "We appreciate your willingness to share your experience," replied the philosopher, a tall man with silver-streaked hair. "But understand that our task is not merely to listen. It is to determine whether what you claim is real, and if so, whether it is safe to allow humanity to pursue it." Cassandra inclined her head. "I accept that responsibility." The council's leader, the master physicist, folded her hands. "Begin at the moment of ignition. Describe every sensation, every shift in perception, every anomaly." Cassandra inhaled and began recounting her journey once more. This time she spoke more slowly, weighing each detail with deliberation. As she described the calmness of the transition, the swirling expanses of color, and the conceptual landscapes beyond reality, the displays around the chamber automatically adjusted to reflect her descriptions. The facility's adaptive holographic system attempted to visualize her words, but no rendering achieved accuracy. Colors appeared too linear, shapes too static. Her descriptions defied representation, and the system struggled. When she described the spherical entity, the sphere's impressions, the visions of civilizations, and the collapse of dimensional anchors, the council members exchanged measured glances. The anthropologist leaned forward. "You said the beings you encountered communicated through impressions, not language. Can you elaborate on the nature of these impressions?" "They bypassed verbal structure entirely," Cassandra replied. "They conveyed meaning directly, intentions, emotions, concepts. The impressions were layered. Some were vivid visions, others were intuitive recognitions. It felt like being shown thought made manifest." The philosopher spoke next. "Do you believe the impressions were external in origin, or could they have been generated by your mind attempting to make sense of unfamiliar stimuli?" "I know the difference between imagination and interaction," Cassandra said firmly. "The sphere's impressions held structure beyond my cognitive baseline. They revealed knowledge I had never encountered. They integrated seamlessly with information from the vessel and my resonance arrays. It was not internal speculation." The strategist crossed his arms. "Yet you admit the entity's nature is beyond our classification. How do you know it did not manipulate you?" Cassandra met his gaze evenly. "Manipulation implies intent to deceive or control. The sphere conveyed caution, guidance, and context. It did not force my decisions. It offered perspective, and everything it showed me aligned with logical consequences of dimensional instability." The historian chimed in. "The civilizations you observed, did they resemble any known species?" "No," Cassandra said. "Their forms shifted depending on their environment. Their architecture responded to thoughts. Their technology was woven directly into the fabric of their dimensional layer. They had passed beyond physical limitation, and yet, even they fell prey to overreach. The master physicist's expression sharpened. Your description of dimensional collapse implies a destruction that propagated across multiple layers. How certain are you that the remnants you saw were not symbolic rather than literal? I am certain, Cassandra replied. The sphere conveyed the consequence with clarity. Those civilizations unraveled because they altered fundamental constants without fully understanding them. They pulled too aggressively on the threads of reality. The collapse was not metaphorical. It was the literal dissolution of their existence. The energy systems engineer studied Cassandra carefully. Your vessel reacted to the sphere. It stabilized your experience. It integrated alien energy patterns. Do you believe your design triggered the encounter? Yes, Cassandra said. The resonance arrays were calibrated to detect fluctuations in space-time fabric. They reached deeper than conventional sensors. The sphere responded to the array's harmonic output. It recognized that the vessel was reaching into its domain. The council exchanged looks. The philosopher spoke again. You stand before us claiming that humanity has discovered a doorway to realms where civilizations surpass all known achievements. You also claim that this doorway carries catastrophic risk. Why should humanity step through it? Because humanity's strength, Cassandra said without hesitation, is not in its power, but in its adaptability. Where others collapsed under the weight of their own brilliance, humanity can thrive by learning from their mistakes. We do not need to replicate what they built. We can build something new, something balanced. And if humanity misuses this knowledge, the strategist asked, then humanity will face consequences, Cassandra replied. But so long as we fear the unknown more than we seek to understand it, we will remain limited. The pathway exists. Ignoring it will not make it disappear. Our choice is whether to guide the journey or allow reckless individuals to pursue it without oversight. The philosopher raised an eyebrow. So you seek oversight? Yes, Cassandra said. Guidance, collaboration, but not suppression, not fear-driven paralysis. Humanity deserves a chance to rise. The anthropologist nodded slowly, considering her words. You speak of humanity's potential with remarkable certainty. Why? Because I saw it, Cassandra said softly, not explicitly, but through the sphere's impressions, I sensed how humanity appears from the outside. Other civilizations view us as reckless, yes, but also as profoundly creative, driven, unpredictable. We are not bound by tradition or constrained by what has preceded us. We build not because we are told to, but because we refuse to remain stagnant. The historian leaned back. Humanity's unpredictability has also led to conflict, destruction, and short-sighted actions. True, Cassandra admitted, but unpredictability is not inherently destructive. It is the foundation of creativity. It is the reason humanity has survived every obstacle it has faced. The master physicist studied her carefully. You said the sphere showed you a map of pathways, intersecting lines and nodes representing dimensional routes. Did it indicate where those routes lead? Some led to stable dimensional layers, Cassandra replied. Others were turbulent and unstable. Some pathways glowed with conceptual clarity. Others flickered erratically. The sphere did not label them as safe or unsafe. It merely revealed their existence. The interpretation of risk is ours, and the path back to our home reality, it was faint, tangled with instability, difficult to traverse, but the vessel succeeded because the sphere guided it. The philosopher's eyes narrowed. What prevents the sphere from guiding others? What prevents it from influencing humanity's direction? Nothing prevents it, Cassandra said, but it has no interest in control. It responds to resonance. If humanity constructs vessels capable of navigating dimensional layers, other spheres may appear. Perhaps none will, but we cannot allow fear to dictate our progress. The strategist leaned forward again. Your knowledge gives you unparalleled influence in this matter. Why should we trust you? Because I returned, Cassandra said. I could have stayed within those realms. I could have sought further knowledge alone. But I chose to come back because humanity deserves to share in what lies beyond. Because this is not about my ambition. This is about all of us. Silence followed, long, heavy silence. The council members exchanged glances that suggested complex internal calculations. Director Arcana remained expressionless, observing the dynamics with the precision of someone accustomed to reading between the lines. At last, the master physicist spoke. We must deliberate. You will be escorted back to your quarters while we reach a conclusion. Cassandra nodded. I understand. Without ceremony, the council dismissed her. She followed the guard back to her quarters, the door sliding shut behind her with a soft finality. She exhaled. She replayed every question, every subtle expression, every angle of skepticism and curiosity. She knew she had spoken truth, but truth alone did not guarantee acceptance. Knowledge of this magnitude brought fear, and fear was a powerful motivator. Time passed, minutes, hours. Cassandra paced the limited space, occasionally glancing toward the viewport. The sphere's impressions reached her again, calm, patient, but vigilant. It did not urge her toward any decision. It simply observed. At last her door chimed again. It opened, and Director Arcana stepped inside. His expression remained controlled, but something in his eyes had shifted, an acknowledgement of weighty news. The council has reached a decision, he said. Cassandra braced herself. They have agreed, the director continued, to proceed. Her breath caught, with extreme caution, under strict oversight, and with you at the center of the initiative. A slow smile formed on Cassandra's lips. What will I be allowed to do? She asked. You will lead a division dedicated to understanding the dimensional pathways, he said. You will study the sphere, you will refine your vessel, and you will collaborate with the brightest minds humanity can offer. But, Cassandra prompted. But, the director said, you will be watched closely. Every step will require council approval. And if at any point your work threatens humanity's safety, the project will be terminated. Cassandra nodded. I accept those terms. You will begin tomorrow, Director Arcana said. Rest tonight, you will need your strength. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, the council has named the project. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. What name did they choose? Boundary Initiative. Cassandra considered the name. It lacked the poetic resonance she might have chosen, but its meaning was clear. Humanity had reached a boundary and now sought to cross it. I understand, she said quietly. Director Arcana nodded once and departed. Cassandra returned to the viewport and looked at the stars below, the world turning slowly beneath her. The sphere's impressions glowed softly at the edge of her awareness. Humanity was ready. The threshold had opened, and the journey, long, dangerous, and extraordinary, was only beginning. Cassandra did not sleep that night despite the director's suggestion. She lay on the narrow bunk for a time, staring at the recessed lights overhead, but her mind refused to settle. Every thought spiraled outward into possibility. Every memory pressed itself against the present with a clarity too sharp to ignore. Eventually she rose, crossed the small room, and returned to the viewport. The planet turned beneath her like a vast, unknowable engine, the storms swirling along its curves, illuminated by glints of sunlight and faint shadows cast by other orbiting structures. As she watched the play of light and motion, the impressions from the sphere pulsed faintly. It was not intrusive, but it maintained a quiet presence, a companion on the edge of perception. She wondered if it sensed her growing anticipation. The hours passed in an indistinct blur until the facility's automated cycle brightened the lights to signify morning. Cassandra straightened her uniform, secured her hair, and prepared herself with deliberate calm. When the door chimed, she answered it immediately. A junior officer stood on the other side and escorted her to a lift that carried them deep into the interior of the orbital complex. The division she was meant to lead had already been established. What had once been a largely abandoned research wing had been transformed overnight into a sprawling, multi-tiered laboratory. Cassandra stepped through the entrance arch, and was greeted by an expanse of interconnected platforms, data terminals, diagnostic arrays, and shimmering containment fields. Engineers moved briskly between workstations, exchanging information through quick, efficient gestures. Analysts hovered over floating screens packed with scrolling readings from her vessel's hardware. Several specialists were clustered around a massive resonance harmonizer, calibrating its crystalline components with tools that refracted light into intricate patterns across the room. All motion paused when Cassandra entered. Silence settled like a physical weight as dozens of pairs of eyes fixed on her. Then the director stepped forward. "You will be working with these people closely," he said. "They have been cleared to participate in the Boundary Initiative. Their records are impeccable. Their expertise is essential." He gestured toward the group, and Cassandra met the gaze of each individual. She saw fear in some eyes, excitement in others, and in a few, a kind of reverence she found uncomfortable. She was not here to inspire awe. She was here to work. The director led her through the laboratory, showing her the newly installed subsystems. A communications array capable of transmitting controlled resonance pulses. A containment vault specifically engineered to house the sphere. A dedicated wing for the reconstruction of her vessel, which was currently suspended in a web of stabilizing fields as if captured mid-flight. The sight of the vessel stirred something deep within her, an emotion woven from pride, memory, and anticipation. A group of engineers stepped aside as she approached. One of them, an older man with a severe expression and hands that bore the faint discoloration of years spent handling exotic materials, addressed her. "We took the liberty of initiating preliminary diagnostics," he said. "Your vessel is structurally intact, but several components appear altered. We cannot determine whether these changes occurred during your journey or after your return." Cassandra nodded and ran her hand along the edge of the hull. The surface felt subtly different beneath her fingertips, as if a faint vibration pulsed through the material. This resonance did not match any conventional energy signature she recognized. The sphere's influence was embedded within the vessel like a distant echo. "What is the Council's directive regarding the sphere itself?" Cassandra asked. The director motioned for her to follow. He led her to a secured chamber reinforced by multiple layers of containment. Two guards stepped aside, and the door parted to reveal the crystalline sphere floating at the center of a controlled suspension field. It emitted no light, yet it radiated a presence that filled the room. The scientists monitoring it remained at a respectful distance, studying holographic readings projected above their terminals. "You will determine how to safely interact with it," the director said. "The Council forbids any unsupervised resonance activation. Under no circumstances is anyone to attempt communication without your involvement." Cassandra stepped closer to the containment field. The sphere responded with a faint hum of awareness. It felt like a greeting, not warm, not cold, simply present. She reached out with her mind, not touching the field, but lowering her mental barriers just enough to let the impressions settle. Images flickered at the edges of her perception, lines of potentialities crossing and recrossing, shifting structural geometries, a veil drawn back. She sensed the sphere's focus on humanity, a curiosity unmatched by any emotion she had ever known. Then the impressions faded. The sphere did not push further. It accepted her presence and watched without judgment. "We will begin a systematic analysis," Cassandra said, turning toward the scientists. "But understand this, the sphere is not an object in the conventional sense. Treat it as a being, a mind. Its responses may appear passive, but they are intentional. Any attempt to treat it as a mere artifact will fail." The scientists exchanged glances, and the director nodded. "That aligns with our preliminary observations," he said. "It has not reacted to our instruments in any measurable way. It appears to be waiting." The rest of the day unfolded in a torrent of activity. Cassandra met with the sub-team leaders, reviewed diagnostic data, examined the energy fields surrounding her vessel, and oversaw the initial calibration of the resonance harmonizer. She provided explanations when asked, though many of her answers relied on concepts she herself had only begun to grasp. She described the impressions the sphere had shown her, the dimensional collapse, the fate of the civilizations that overreached, the delicate balance required to navigate the pathways without tearing them apart. Her audience listened with a mixture of skepticism and awe. By midday, she found herself surrounded by questions ranging from the deeply theoretical to the pragmatically immediate. Every specialist approached from a different angle, eager to understand how to translate her abstract experience into concrete methodology. Cassandra answered what she could and admitted ignorance where necessary. She refused to pretend certainty where none existed. The unknown was too vast for false confidence. In the late hours of the day, the director approached her with a data slate. "The council will expect a full preliminary report this evening," he said. "They have requested your personal assessment of humanity's readiness for controlled dimensional exploration." Cassandra took the slate, but she did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the viewport overlooking her vessel. She stood silently for a long moment, weighing her thoughts. The sphere's impressions lingered, guiding but not dictating. Humanity's potential was great, but so too was its propensity for impulsiveness. Balancing opportunity with caution required patience, perhaps more patience than the council possessed. She finally spoke. "Readiness is not a fixed condition," she said. "It is a progression. If the council expects a definitive declaration, they will be disappointed. I can provide a framework, not a guarantee." The director nodded. "That is acceptable. They expect you to define the boundaries of possibility, not promise outcomes." Cassandra considered this, then sat at a nearby terminal and began composing her report. She described the elemental nature of the sphere's perceptions, the fragility of the dimensional layers she had witnessed, and the need for humanity to approach the threshold with respect rather than ambition. She outlined the necessary steps: stabilization of resonance fields, psychological preparation for nonlinear perception, safeguards against energetic destabilization, and the construction of a more resilient vessel capable of responding to rapid dimensional shifts. As she wrote, she felt the faintest whisper of approval from the sphere. When she finished, she submitted the report and returned her attention to the laboratory. Evening had fallen, but the facility remained bright with artificial light. Personnel continued their work with tireless focus. Cassandra admired their determination. This initiative required more than intellectual brilliance. It required resilience, adaptability, and humility, qualities that humanity often overlooked in favor of achievement. The director approached her once more, his expression unusually thoughtful. "You handled yourself well today," he said. "The team respects you. They may not fully understand your experience, but they trust your judgment." Cassandra shook her head slightly. "Trust should not be given so easily. They should question me, challenge me. Blind trust leads to disaster." The director allowed himself a faint smile. "They will challenge you. Specialists always do, but they also recognize that you have returned with knowledge none of us possess. Even if they doubt the scope of your claims, they cannot doubt the reality of what happened to you." The instrumentation recorded anomalies that defy explanation. "Explanations will come," Cassandra said, "but only if we proceed carefully." Night deepened outside the orbital structure. Cassandra walked through the quiet laboratory, passing dormant screens and idle devices that would roar back to life with the next shift. She paused before the containment chamber one last time. The sphere hovered silently, its presence unwavering. Cassandra regarded it with steady eyes. "Tomorrow," she whispered under her breath, "we begin the work that will define humanity's future." The sphere pulsed once, soft and subtle, like a heartbeat at the edge of perception. It did not speak. It simply acknowledged. Cassandra left the chamber and allowed the door to seal behind her. The corridor stretched ahead, illuminated by steady lights. She felt no fear, no hesitation, only resolve. The threshold was open. Humanity had taken its first deliberate step toward what lay beyond, and Cassandra would guide them through possibility, through peril, and into the vast uncharted realms waiting on the other side of reality's fragile boundary. Cassandra rose before the facility lights brightened for the morning cycle. Sleep had once again eluded her. Her thoughts had been too active, her senses too attuned to the presence of the sphere resting in its containment chamber. Today marked the formal beginning of the Boundary Initiative's first phase, and the weight of that responsibility pressed against her with a steady, insistent pressure. Not oppressive, but undeniable. When the door chimed, she was ready, fully dressed and alert. A young officer escorted her to the primary laboratory level where the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Technicians checked and rechecked calibration arrays. Engineers reviewed schematics projected onto floating displays. Specialists murmured to one another as they refined their models and compared readings. Cassandra surveyed them with a quiet determination that steadied those around her. They stood straighter when she approached, as though her presence set a tone none wished to disrupt. Director Nail Arcana appeared moments later, his posture as measured as ever. "The Council will observe remotely," he said. "Your team is assembled and awaiting your instruction." He gestured toward the central platform where the resonance harmonizer had been prepared. Its crystalline components shimmered faintly in the overhead lighting. Cassandra stepped forward, placed her hands along the harmonizer's interface conduits, and took a slow breath. The sphere sensed her focus, its impressions brushing against her awareness like distant waves. "This begins Phase 1, Cassandra said to the gathered personnel. "Our goal is simple, to establish safe resonance communication with the dimensional entity. We will not attempt any form of traversal today. We aim only to understand its thresholds." The specialists nodded. One of the engineers adjusted a panel and replied, "All systems calibrated. Harmonic frequencies stable. Containment field surrounding the sphere is holding at triple redundancy." Cassandra glanced toward the secure chamber where the sphere levitated within the containment field. It remained perfectly still, its crystalline surface reflecting no external light, yet she felt its focus sharpen as the harmonizer powered up. The first pulse emanated from the device in a controlled ripple. The sphere responded instantaneously. A web of faint luminosity shimmered across its surface, intricate patterns dancing like thoughts forming. Gasps rose from the nearest observers. "What you are witnessing," Cassandra said, "is recognition. The sphere responds because it understands the signature. It recognizes our intent." She closed her eyes and allowed the impressions to coalesce. The sphere greeted her with a clarity stronger than before. Images and concepts wove themselves into her senses. She witnessed pathways unfurling through a layered expanse, each one shimmering with potential instability. She saw nodes of converging energy, some stable, others volatile, and at the center of it all, she saw a point of connection that felt deeply familiar. It resonated with her presence. "It sees us," she murmured aloud. "It sees all of us." Several specialists exchanged anxious glances. The philosopher among them stepped closer. "Does it approve of our efforts?" he asked. Cassandra shook her head. "Approval is a human concept. It perceives what we are doing. It acknowledges it. That is all." The second harmonic pulse activated, and the patterns on the sphere intensified. Data streams erupted across the laboratory's displays. Cassandra interpreted them instinctively, though the raw information spilled across the screens in forms the others struggled to decipher. "It is sending impressions," she said. "It wants us to understand the structure of the dimensional layers, but it cannot simplify the information. We must adjust our methods." The energy systems engineer stepped forward, eyes lit with fascination. "If we adjust the resonance filters, we might translate its patterns into a stable conceptual framework." "Do so," Cassandra said, "but carefully. If the filters oversimplify, they may distort the impression and trigger a recall. The engineer nodded and made the adjustments. The harmonizer's crystals refracted light in new patterns. The sphere's glow shifted, its impressions deepening. Cassandra felt a cascade of concepts sweep through her, vulnerability intertwining with potential, threads of previous civilizations unraveling beneath the weight of their ambition, the delicate balance maintained by restraint and awareness. She spoke quickly, translating the impressions aloud for the team. It is showing us that the pathways respond to intention, not expectation, not force. If we try to impose order on them, they destabilize, but if we approach them with adaptive resonance, they align with our movement. That implies a form of sentience within the pathways themselves, one specialist said. Not sentience, Cassandra replied. Responsiveness, a natural system reacting to intrusion. Hours passed as the communication sequence unfolded. The sphere's impressions grew more intricate. Cassandra deciphered them with increasing fluency, guiding the team through analyses that would have taken months without her insight. The Council's remote presence remained silent but attentive, monitoring every development. By mid-afternoon, the impressions shifted. Cassandra stiffened. The sphere was no longer merely showing them information. It was warning them. "Cease the pulses," she said abruptly. The engineers froze. "Now," she added with sharper emphasis. The harmonizer powered down. The lights dimmed briefly. "What did you see?" Director Arcana asked. Cassandra steadied herself. It showed instability, a fracture pattern forming along one of the pathways. It sensed our resonance echoing into that layer. It is telling us that even our passive communication influences the dimensional fabric. The philosopher spoke quietly. "Do you believe it fears damage?" "No," Cassandra said. "It does not experience fear, but it recognizes danger, and it does not want us to repeat the mistakes of its predecessors." Her gaze swept across the team. "We must increase our caution. Even our smallest actions create ripples." Despite the seriousness of the warning, progress had exceeded expectations. Cassandra prepared a summary for the Council. Before she finished, however, Director Arcana approached her with a message. "The Council requests an immediate consultation," he said. "They want your interpretation of the risks." Cassandra followed him to the secure communications chamber. The Council appeared on separate translucent panels forming a circle around her. Their expressions varied, thoughtful, intrigued, cautious. The master physicist addressed her first. "Your report indicates that even controlled pulses carry risk. At what point does the danger outweigh the potential for advancement?" "We are not near that point," Cassandra replied. "We simply need to refine our approach. The sphere is guiding us towards safer methodology. It does not oppose our exploration." The strategist leaned forward. "But does it truly prioritize our safety, or does it simply seek to maintain control?" Cassandra held the strategist's gaze. "The sphere does not seek control. It does not impose anything. It reacts. If it wished to stop us, it would not have guided me back. It would not have revealed anything." The anthropologist spoke softly. "You are certain of your interpretation?" "Yes," Cassandra said. "And I also know this. The sphere respects restraint. It values balance. If we disregard those principles, we will encounter consequences." The philosopher nodded thoughtfully. "Your consistency remains reassuring." The master physicist ended the session with a final directive. "Continue your work, but increase redundancy in all containment and resonance systems. We cannot risk inadvertent destabilization." When Cassandra returned to the laboratory, she found her team engaged in animated discussion. They paused as she entered. One of the analysts stepped forward hesitantly. "We detected something unusual during the last sequence," she said. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. "Show me." The analyst projected the readings onto a wide display. A faint but distinct signal pulsed through the data. Cassandra felt a chill. The signal did not originate from the sphere. "It is external," she said slowly. This signature came from beyond the sphere's dimensional layer. A silence swept the room. The director approached the display with tense focus. "Can you interpret it?" Cassandra closed her eyes and listened to the residue within the signal. It was faint, broken, as though it had traveled an extraordinary distance. Not a message, an echo, a remnant. "It is not directed at us," she said. "It is a fragment, a collapse echo from a civilization that fell." "Then it confirms your account," the director said. "Yes," Cassandra replied, "and it also confirms that the collapse reverberated far beyond its origin. These echoes still travel through the layers long after the source was destroyed." The philosopher stepped closer. "Does this pose immediate danger?" "No," Cassandra said, "but it reinforces the sphere's warning. Dimensional instability lingers. We must ensure that our exploration does not awaken dormant fractures." As the hours stretched into the evening cycle, Cassandra worked with her team to refine the resonance algorithms. They strengthened containment protocols, reinforced energy dampeners, and updated the harmonizer filters. Cassandra's awareness remained finely tuned to the sphere throughout, ensuring that no fluctuation went unchecked. Late in the night, after most personnel had retired, Cassandra wandered back to the containment chamber. Alone with the sphere, she lowered her mental barriers and allowed the impressions to manifest fully. The sphere showed her a vision unlike the others. A pathway illuminated by a steady glow, a junction point stable and aligned, a destination marked not by danger but by potential. She understood. The sphere was showing her the first pathway humanity could safely explore. When the vision faded, Cassandra opened her eyes. The sphere hovered silently, waiting. "We are not ready yet," she whispered, "but we will be." The sphere pulsed once in acknowledgement. The next morning, she would reveal the pathway to the team. The work ahead would be immense. It would span years, perhaps decades. But today, for the first time, she had seen not only the risks, but the beginning of a safe route forward. And humanity would follow that route, not blindly, not recklessly, but with wisdom built from the failures of those who came before. As Cassandra left the chamber, she felt the quiet hum of possibility echo through the corridors. The Boundary Initiative had taken its first true step, and the future, vast and uncharted, waited for them to arrive.